This is Shop Talk, our weekly discussion of journalism issues. I'm Rich Egger.
I'm Will Buss.
And I'm Pam Peters.
And Pam, you are new to Western. Welcome, and new to the Shop Talk panel. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. I am a recent graduate with my PhD from the University of Kansas. I grew up in Kansas, got my master's and BA from Pittsburgh State University. And prior to that, I spent 9 years teaching broadcasting and media at Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee. So I've been kind of around the United States a little bit.
Well, it's timely today to have someone from Kansas on the program because, as you probably have heard, journalists around the country condemned the actions of police in Marion, Kansas, who this month raided the offices of the Marion County Record, a weekly newspaper. As NPR reported, the newspaper has a history of hard-hitting reporting, which at times has upset local officials. Eric Meyer is the paper's publisher and owner, and his mother, Joan Meyer, had worked for the paper until she died at age 98, just one day after the raid. She had been a newspaper woman since 1953, and perhaps one of the final things she said was in reference to the raid. She said, "These are Hitler tactics, and something has to be done." Several media law experts told NPR the raid appears to be a violation of federal law, which protects journalists from this type of action. The Privacy Protection Act of 1980 broadly prohibits law enforcement officials from searching for or seizing information from reporters. And again, Pam, you're familiar. You've been to Marion, haven't you?
Yes, I've been to Marion on several occasions, so I am familiar. It's a very small town. You know, you can walk across the town. I can walk across the town in about 10 minutes. Everybody seems to pretty much know everybody. And it's in a very, like I said, a small community, small county. The county of Marion County has a population of about 10,000 people. So everybody kind of knows everybody in the area.
So what do you make of what happened here?
Having grown up in a small town, even smaller than Marion, small town politics, in a way, it shocked me in the fact that this is unprecedented in journalism. But at the same time, small town politics, it didn't completely surprise me that something like this, they would try to do something like that for whatever the purpose was. That, you know, I know they're still uncovering things as we're talking. But whatever the purpose was, you know, it could have been in small towns a lot of times, well, it's not going to get out beyond the city limits, so we can kind of do whatever we need to do.
In this case, it certainly got beyond the city limits. What do you make of the outpouring of support for the newspaper from other media organizations and outlets?
I think it's good. Actually, we were discussing this situation in a class this morning, and as journalists, we have a lot of power, even though we may not think we do. You know, as we discussed this morning, even though, you know, the students I talked to, and this was a concern of mine when the story broke, well, if the police can do this, what's to stop them from doing something else if there's something they don't want out there? And then, you know, we talked about, but we have the press, we have the audience. So we can put this information out here, and I think this has been great. You know, this has gone beyond just the state of Kansas, but nationally, even internationally. The press is putting it out there to say, hey, and I agree, you know, the woman that died, these are Hitler tactics or Nazi tactics. And the press, I think, has been very good about maybe not expressing it to that extent, but really explaining, look, this is what's going on. This is what happens if you don't let a free society operate the way a free society should.
Absolutely. I was thinking, you know, this is a free press, and this is an attack. This is an attack, literally an attack on a free press. We don't and shouldn't have law enforcement, you know, coming in and trying to control that. They can certainly air a grievance, or they can seek to get their side of a story or something of that nature. But this is certainly no way to do it, to try to confiscate you know, a building or computers and materials from a newsroom. This is outrageous. This is asinine. I don't think that's overstating it. This is This is the law enforcement taking to criminal tactics just because they don't agree with the facts of the story. And I'm at least, as outraged as I am as a journalist and a journalism educator. I'm at least pleased to hear that something that happened in a rather remote area of the country is being very well publicized, and many of us are coming aware of this. And I think you or Pam, Rich, made the point. If police are liable to do this, then what? And so, what does that do to our free press? Our industry has been under attack in a number of ways, and this is just another unfortunate example of that. And something people need to realize what's happening here and how this affects our democracy and how we inform our citizens.
Well, these literally are criminal acts. It appears to be a violation of federal law, as I mentioned. My concern is, will there be any repercussions for this?
I think the state of Kansas, as I've been watching it slowly evolving, that they are, because it's also a breach of several Kansas laws. One of the major laws Kansas has in effect is to protect media, is you have to subpoena a news outlet, before you can serve a warrant to them. And the subpoena was not followed. There was no protocol followed. So the state of Kansas, I know, is already investigating that. The KBI is involved. So, I hope there's repercussions. I think there will be to some extent. I do know, I've heard from people that I know there, but I've also read it. There is some division within the town. There's a question about, do we get rid of the sheriff? Which that's a whole other issue.
Or do we get rid of the newspaper? Or
that's also
people
a question.
Calling for that?
Right now, so the city council's being very quiet. They actually put a sign up at their last city council meeting, essentially saying we will not discuss this, with several 40-some exclamation points. So they're trying small town politics. We're going to kind of. And it may just be they're trying to figure out what to do. So I don't want to just put it on that. But I know there's some people there that don't like the paper because in a small town, especially, why are you investigative reporting us? We think it's a major thing in a larger city because it's so much more personal, I think. Because small town politics can get very personal. And I think, so I kind of have to wonder too, are they going to try to go after the paper? But I am glad to see, because I'm not always impressed with, but the state of Kansas right now is stepping in and saying, let us take over. We're not going to let the county continue to handle this. In the city, let us take over. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I hope the paper, they don't make them get rid of the paper but I do hope. My biggest fear, and I'm sure all of us in this room, is they're just going to say, well, yeah, some things happen, but let's just set it aside and move on. Because I think then that leaves open for the same thing to happen somewhere else.
Right. We need to see more than a slap on the wrist for what happened there. Every place I've lived, whether it's in a large metropolitan area or a small town such as Macomb, people have complained about the local newspaper at times, but as we've seen in some of the small towns in this region, you sure miss it when it's gone, don't you?
Yes, I think we're certainly missing that now. I mean, a newspaper exists in this town, just not local reporting. It's not truly doing the service. Those people in Marion need to realize, and it's easy for a studio full of journalists to say this, but they need to realize how fortunate they are that they have a team of reporters, a newsroom of, I don't know if there are 2 reporters or 12 in that newsroom, but that they're looking out for their best interests. And I think they need to realize that. And these such dire, drastic reaction happened here because someone was afraid of the truth. And we could debate the truth, but reporters, if they were worth their salt, they went and vetted the information, and somebody overstepped their boundaries. And to your question, Rich, I think, yes, I hope that this is punished to the most severe extent, because we need to set a precedent here that this shouldn't be tolerated, and a free press needs to be able to remain, vibrant and be able to function. Any community, no matter how large or small it is. Yes, every community has differing points of view about politics and points of view, and if you don't agree with what was being reported, you can't disagree with the facts. That's something that we have to agree on. But that lies in the very problems that we're having right now in this industry, or this our society right now is questioning what the facts are and calling reporters fake reporters and fake news. And of course, that's getting into a whole other can of worms that we have also been debating on this program for some time. But this is where this is coming from, and I think people are becoming rather brazen lately. And you have a sheriff's department or law enforcement summonsing and seizing equipment. This is, again, I hope this is prosecuted to the fullest extent, and that this is people realize this is something that shouldn't be tolerated.
Well, and to kind of build on that, I think people tend to forget that whole First Amendment freedom of the press was specifically put in because the press's responsibility is to, hold accountable those in leadership. And if we forget that and allow something like this to happen, we can no longer hold those in leadership accountable. We as journalists also have a responsibility to ethically regulate ourselves. And when we do something wrong, we should be held accountable. But that's on the flip side, those in leadership positions need to be too. So I think that's something that a lot of people tend to forget. Well, the First Amendment gives me the right freedom of speech. But there's also that freedom of the press in there, and that is specifically there to protect journalists and I hate to say it, but in their watchdog role of, holding those in leadership accountable. And a lot of times, like you said, they are the ones holding government officials or those in power accountable when the rest of society is not.
With that, we're going to wrap up our discussion for today. Welcome to the panel, Pam.
Thank you.
And our listeners can join us again next week here at tspr.org for more of Shop Talk.